from a national perspective, I think it's different. There's more people talking about Penn State this year in a different way than maybe we've had in a long time. So I think that's great, right?
Yeah.
What I try to explain to people, though, is it doesn't feel any different in this building, on this campus, or in this community.
You're tuned in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, guiding your gridiron journey, none other than your host, former NFL lineman, Ross Tucker.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It is a Monster Monday presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Decent amount of news to get to since Thursday's show, or I guess Friday morning show. Greg and I recorded it Thursday night. I will give you my thoughts on the Hall of Fame game because there were some takeaways from the first preseason action this year in the NFL. Lions and Chargers. Everybody will be in action this week, including yours truly Thursday night as the Eagles host the Bengals. Bengals, by the way, supposedly going to play some of their starters a decent amount in that game. Maybe Joe Burrow. That'll be interesting. It also should be noted that Wednesday night, I don't know if I've mentioned this on the show. I've certainly mentioned it on social media at Ross Tucker NFL as well as at Ross Tucker Pod. Jack and I are going to be recording several episodes in front of a live audience Wednesday night at Soul Joel's in Pottstown for anybody in Eastern Pennsylvania, 4 to 6 p.m. Pretty cool. We'll record my AFC preview and predictions, my NFC preview and predictions. Then there's a Q&A, which I think we should record, Jack. That might make for a good episode. And then we will get to the meet and greet. Anybody that's there gets to say hello. I love that. Love meeting people that get a chance to listen in person. So it's in Pottstown, Soul Joel's, Wednesday night, August 6th, 4 to 6 p.m. I don't think I had mentioned that on the show as of yet. Huge guest today, by the way. We got James Franklin, the head coach of Penn State. If you listen to Friday's episode, I was there all day Thursday. Jack and I were there all day Thursday. Incredibly impressed by really that whole organization, the whole program, and in particular, Franklin's attention to detail. I mean, he is a very, very impressive CEO type. We'll talk and play that interview with James Franklin momentarily. We're going to talk about the Micah Parsons news as well. There's a bunch of stuff to get to, but we will start with James Franklin, who's presented by, listen, I think some of you know my routine. I drive back on Monday mornings at 3:30 a.m. from the Jersey Shore, and as soon as I get back to Pennsylvania, that's when I record the rest of this episode. Thank goodness for the Liquid Death Peach Iced Tea, which is a lifesaver. I'm not a coffee guy. I am a Liquid Death Iced Tea guy, which is not only delicious, but it gives me a little kickstart this morning, which I absolutely need. It's Big Show time.
The Big Show.
All right, so Coach Franklin, one of my favorite things to do this time of year is to get the college football preview magazines, right? I'm on the beach, Jersey Shore. I'm flipping through. You guys are one in a lot of them. I don't know if you know that or not, but you guys are ranked number one in a lot of them. From your perspective, give me kind of the pros and cons of the expectations for your team this year.
Well, first of all, what's your favorite one?
That's a great question.
That?
I used to always say Street and Smiths. Phil Steele has so much information for like what I need to know for broadcasting
Ton of
stuff.
information.
Yeah, but I hope Phil doesn't get mad at me. Almost like too much.
Yeah, and a lot of it's like abbreviations.
Yeah,
so
you know it. You know it.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten them all this year, but then I just saw. It's funny because I have a gambling show too. So like by far the best college football bettor does power rankings for every team. You guys are number one. His power ratings as well. I don't know what the underlying statistics or measurements are. But anyway, obviously, you know there's big expectations every year at Penn State, but it feels like, I mean, I can't remember the last time Penn State started at 1.
Yeah. So Big Ten Media Days, obviously this is a big part of the discussion, I guess I kind of look at it in two different ways. Number one, we're anywhere between number 5 and number 1 in the country in pretty much everybody's polls. From a national perspective, I think it's different. There's more people talking about Penn State this year in a different way than maybe we've had in a long time. So I think that's great, right?
Yeah.
What I try to explain to people, though, is it doesn't feel any different in this building, on this campus, or in this community, because the expectations at Penn State are always really, really high. I mean, we finished, you could make the argument, a drive or a quarter away from playing for the national championship last year, and people weren't happy. Where a lot of people, that type of season, right? That type of season, they would be elated and be excitement about it and all that kind of stuff. And we're at a place that expects to compete or win national championships every year. So it doesn't feel any different here, but we recognize that things that are going on nationally, what I tell our guys is, look, they've earned that. So, like, there's a ton of respect, I think, that goes with that, and they've earned that national respect. But at the end of the day, preseason polls mean absolutely nothing. They're great for people to sit on the beach and read or discuss, or media people to have arguments about. But at the end of the day, preseason polls mean nothing. It's how the last poll looks.
Well, so the one question I'll say about that, though, which I think is interesting, is because of the expanded playoff and all those things, on some weird level, it does feel like where you start does matter. In the sense that if you start at 25 and you have 2 losses, you're out. You start at 1 and have 2 losses, you might still be in. So you'd rather be higher than lower.
Yeah, but I'd make the argument where we've pretty much been ranked the last couple years is similar. We were in the ballpark where we were starting. You weren't having to climb. But I think we've all seen there's been a ton of teams that have been able to climb, and there's been a ton of teams that have been ranked high and not made it. You brought up, Penn State, and when was the last time we were ranked like this? There hasn't been a lot of the preseason stuff. There's been times where we've been ranked number 1 and haven't finished. I know Pat Kraft, our AD, talks about him being at Indiana and playing Penn State when they were ranked number 1 in the country. So, 30 years since the last national championship. So, again, we take a lot of pride in it. There's a lot of excitement. But, again, all that matters is our behaviors and our habits daily to get where we want to go.
Yeah, and I think for you guys last year to play in the Big Ten championship game and then to win those college football playoff games the way you did, to play Notre Dame the way you did, I think that is why people are talking about Penn State a little bit differently. The other thing that's different is obviously the NIL. You didn't spend a lot of time in the NFL, a year or 2?
Yes.
Green Bay?
1 year in Green Bay.
I'm curious, and you talk to NFL guys all the time. How is college football now with the revenue sharing and NIL? How is it similar to the NFL, and how is it still different?
Yeah, so it's more similar than it's ever been, right? I think the fact that the athletes are getting paid, however you want to describe how the pay is happening, pay for play, whatever you want to say, you can make a ton of different arguments in how it's described. But the ability for players to be able to make money is there now, and probably always should have been, right? Yeah. We've had these discussions before. One of the things that I probably like the most about it, though, is in the old days, you'd sit down with a kid and their family, and you'd say, look, all the data says you should come back to school. You're going to be a 3rd-round draft choice. You're going to be a 4th-round draft choice. And they would have to come back for nothing. Right? And although it may have been the best decision long-term for their career if they could move up significantly in rounds, it's still hard to do that. And some kids and some families had really no choice. Their family situation dictated they had to come out. Well, now a guy can come back, and it's not for nothing now. He can come back for good money, have a chance to graduate, help the team. I think that's the other reason you asked why people are talking about Penn State so much. We had so many of those type of players, 8 or 9 players that could have left early that decided to come back. That's a big reason why our rankings are so high. So I think those things are similar. I think one of the biggest differences, as you know, in the collective bargaining agreement and some of the stuff with the NFL Players Association, guys like yourself now, in my opinion, you may feel differently. It's harder now because the way the rules are set, you get less development in the NFL than ever. Where in college ball, we're still able to develop these guys and have a little bit more flexibility based on the rules.
So you said it. Anytime I talk to somebody and they complain about NIL, I said, do you know how many kids are playing college football this year that wouldn't be without NIL?
That's right.
I mean, I'm not going to say specific names for your team, but they would be gone. That's a huge, huge edge. One thing that I think people are a little bit confused on, there's now a salary cap or there's revenue sharing, but you can still go above and beyond that with NIL money. So is it fair to say there still is sort of an arms race when it comes to compensation in college football?
Yeah, so I think what the philosophy was and the theory on the revenue sharing and the cap was that we're going to do this, and this will help slow down the NIL.
Right.
It did nothing. All we did was take $20 million, give that to the players in revenue sharing, but that's done nothing, to slow down. Some of the court cases, it's done nothing to slow down NIL. So in terms of all the challenges, all the ways that certain programs were able to gain advantages from, they're all still there. So if you're wanting to compete at the very, very highest level consistently, you're still having to compete in these areas, no different than before we had revenue sharing in the cap.
Some of the guys that you have come back this year include your quarterback, Drew Allar, and there's supposedly a good quarterback draft class next year, and Drew's part of it. If people ask you, I'm sure scouts do, to describe Drew as a person, as a player, and as an NFL prospect.
Yeah, so first of all, he checks a ton of boxes, right? The NFL, they have at every position, here are the list of traits and characteristics we're looking at or looking for. And he just checks a ton of those boxes. Size, early on, I don't think anybody was talking about his athleticism, but I think he put on tape last year that he can hurt people with his feet. That's I think, going to be even more so this year.
Can I interject real quick? Was that a conversation you had with him? Because I don't remember him doing that at all the year before. And then last year, it was like, that's a huge advantage for you guys if he just picks up a couple first rounds. That was a conscious decision and discussion.
Yes, so very much so. The game of football has changed. This is not the NFL quarterbacks of the 70s and 80s and early 90s where you could get away with just standing there and throwing the ball. The game has changed. People want more athletes on the field that can hurt you in multiple ways. And I think the way you described it is really good. We don't really need him to rush for 100 yards. But if you can pick up 2 or 3 first downs with your legs, that frustrates a defense. That frustrates a defensive coordinator. And now you feel like you have to defend everything. So he was about 242 pounds a year ago. He's about 232 right now. So all those things are really helping him, and he's worked very hard at it. He's stronger, he's leaner, he's more explosive. So he just checks a ton of boxes, but then he lives it. You got to live the quarterback position, and he lives it. He's got the same girlfriend he's had since high school. He's not a partier. It's school, it's football, and he understands the commitment it takes at this level and even beyond.
What do you want to see from him this year, and what have you heard from NFL teams that they might want to see from him this year?
Yeah, so it's not like a lot of times you have these guys, you go into the season and they have a obvious glaring area that they need to improve on. He doesn't really have that. So it's overall development. And he's taken significant steps in those areas every year he's been on campus. I think the other thing that's going to be critical, not only for Drew, but for our team, is we got to make more plays around him. I mean, how many times do you see in their college game or in NFL and a quarterback throws the ball up in the double coverage?
Yeah.
And the receiver goes up and snatches it like Allen Robinson used to do here forever, and what like Ty Warren did for us last year. And the announcer's saying, what an unbelievable throw. It wasn't an unbelievable throw. Right. The receiver made a play for him, and that's what we need more of. Last year we got it with Tyler Warren. We need more players doing that, and I think in some areas Drew took some criticism for that. And And to be honest with you, that responsibility is spread throughout our entire team. We need more playmaking for him. And obviously those things show up in the biggest games.
You know, it ended in the Notre Dame game, tough loss. Is that something that you bring up a lot, or is that something that you don't want to bring up with the team?
Yeah, I think you address it, right? I think you address it, you watch the film, you make the corrections. As a staff, you really kind of dive into that and say, where do we need to get better? That was a part of going out to the transfer portal and hitting the wide receiver position to get more playmakers around him while we're developing the guys that we have on our current roster. But yeah, it's like anything else, right? You want to deal with the facts that are on the tape and the areas you have to get better, but then you move on. Because if you keep kind of beating that drum of the negatives, then you magnify them. Right. But let's deal with the reality of what's on the tape. Let's learn from it. Let's get better, and let's move forward.
So I want to ask you about NIL and Nick Singleton in particular, because it's funny. I've known him since 8th or 9th grade or whatever. He's from where I'm from. Before NIL, I would have said to him and his dad, you have to go to the NFL. You know, 3 years, he's played a lot for you. I don't know when he would have been drafted, but high enough that it made sense. When you sit down with families now, what do you show them? What's the calculus? Whether it's the NIL, you're projected here, it would probably be this much money. Because nowadays, I mean, depending on where you'd be drafted, some of these guys are actually doing better in college, or it makes a lot more sense to get this money guaranteed in college as opposed to be a 5th, 6th, 7th round pick.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly why I never brought you around before, because I know what you're.
You know my philosophy.
Yeah, you're a businessman. You're all money, money, money. But yeah, I think your point is a good one, right? Like, again, things really haven't changed. So we sit down with the families, we sit down with the players, we have all the data based on what the GMs are saying, where they're being projected to be drafted. What's really good for us is I have 12 years worth of historical evidence of where we told the guys that they would get drafted and where they did.
Oh, nice.
So we can show them what we have told them has actually been very, very accurate.
Right.
So that's helpful. But to your point, we would advise them in the old days the same way we're advising them now, but now there's another conversation. So that other conversation, we're able to say, look, we can make this right. Yeah. This is a win for you. This is a win for Penn State, and we'll find a way that everybody is in a positive situation here. You're not walking away from that significant money.
Got it. The last thing you get asked about all the time, Ohio State, right? What's remarkable to me is how close almost all of those losses have been. It's almost statistically impossible that you guys have not been able to win more of those. That just shouldn't happen. How much do you bring up that? How much of a focus is that? And how crazy is it that you might have had another chance at them last year?
Yeah. So, you know, it's funny because there's a fine line in that, right? Have played them very, very well. We've obviously been successful, but not where we need to be. Yeah. But to your point, I can also show examples of years before we got here when they lost to them by 40, 50, 60, right. 60 points.
Right.
Right. So have things changed? Yes, but not enough. So yeah, it's something I think with anything, kind of like you brought up the Notre Dame game. Like, we can't fool anybody in this room on the team when we're having a team meeting, right, or with the media or with our fans. You got to be honest. You got to hit it straight on and be very direct and be honest of where we have to improve. So we do that. But again, if you continue to pound that drum, then you magnify it. So we're honest. We embrace it. We had a tremendous opportunity to change that storyline, to change that narrative. And that's kind of what we've embraced as a program.
Knowing you a little bit, I know you probably never get a chance, but do you ever think, like, 5 out of the last 9 years, you've won 11 games? I mean, that to do that anywhere is pretty impressive. You don't take 1 second to think about that, do you?
Well, first of all, I'm wired where as soon as you kind of achieve one thing, whether it's a win, you're on to the next one.
Yeah.
You get a recruit, like the staff wants to celebrate. I think they get mad at me sometimes. We're on to the next recruit. We're on to the next win. Again, that kind of goes back to, if you really study the data, if you compare what we've been able to do in the Big Ten It's as good as it's ever happened
Right.
here at Penn State.
No question.
But again, that's no one cares about that. It's totally about national championships. It's totally about Big Ten championships. And I think once we achieve those things, then I think people really look at holistically what we've been able to do here, and it'll be a great story. But right now, no one wants to talk about it because it's completely on whether you're NFL Super Bowl or whether you're college national championship. And the rest of it, I think the college football playoff has changed that a little bit.
Yes.
It's like you're either in the playoffs or
Yep.
you're not. And we dealt with that in the past. Well, now he wants to get in the playoffs, then the goalpost moves again, and it's national championship. But again, we knew all that when we came to Penn State. When Drew chose to be the quarterback at Penn State, that comes with it. When I chose to be the head coach at Penn State, that comes with it. So you embrace it.
Thanks so much for the time and for having us here. It's awesome.
Always welcome.
All right,
Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you.
All right, let's dive into the news. But first, you guys locked and loaded to watch some preseason football this week? Well, you can if you go to buy beer, get gear from Labatt. What you actually do is you buy the Labatt first, but then you go to the website, snap a photo of your receipt, upload it instantly to rack up points for exclusive merch. I take the cooler backpack everywhere. Get points for every purchase, any store, bar, stadium, any size, any product, anywhere you're buying Labatt. It's buy beer, get gear. Go to rewards.labattusa.com and sign up. A couple of years ago, Bob Odenkirk showed up out of nowhere as an action star in Nobody. That movie was a ton of fun, and now he's back in the sequel Nobody 2, hitting theaters on August 15th. Bob returns as Hutch. This time he tries to go on vacation with his family, only for all hell to break loose. It's a real delight to see a guy like Odenkirk kick some serious ass. Nobody 2 is produced by 87 North, the same team behind hits like John Wick, Bullet Train, and The Fall Guy. The film also stars Connie Nielsen, RZA, and the legendary Christopher Lloyd and Sharon Stone. Nobody 2 is a perfect summer movie. You don't want to miss this one. Nobody 2 is only in theaters August 15th.
Tuck's Takes.
All right, Ross, it's nice to say we have had a game since our last show, the Chargers versus the Lions in the Hall of Fame game. What were your thoughts on that matchup?
First of all, I'll just say this. I'll be curious to see the reaction of the listeners or people watching youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL to the James Franklin interview. Like I said, I should probably say this, really appreciate them, bringing us in and inviting us to come there. Even though we're more of an NFL-centric show, it's really, really helpful. It's like continuing education for me to be in those meetings, to see that practice, to talk with coaches. So thank you to James Franklin and the Penn State program. I think you have to start with that game, Jack, with Trey Lance. He was stellar. I mean, what a feather that would be in the cap of Jim Harbaugh if he can get Trey Lance to play at a high level when nobody else has been able to. For the Lions, their backup quarterbacks, Kyle Allen and Hendon Hooker, really struggled. I thought Nico Reed, this is one of the things I love about preseason. Nico Reed, undrafted free agent, looked awesome in that game for the Chargers. And then we got our first virtual measurement. Now, they knew that it was a first down, but if it's close in the preseason, they want to go through the process. So I would imagine that happens in a lot of the preseason games this week. In case you didn't hear, they now have virtual measurements for whether it's not a first down. Still need the refs to spot the ball, but a virtual measurement whether or not it's a first down.
Micah Parsons, he has publicly requested a trade, and it includes specific details of his contract dispute with the Cowboys.
Right, I think this, you never know what's going to happen later in the week, Jack. So I'm going to make this my Labatt take of the week. Brought to you by Labatt. With Labatt, you can buy beer and get gear. Go to their website, snap a photo of your receipt, upload it to gain points towards exclusive merch. Any size, any product, anywhere you're buying Labatt. Sign up at rewards.labattusa.com. And I have 3 thoughts on the Micah Parsons situation in Dallas. Number 1, good rule of thumb. If your team seems to hate having to pay their best players, you might really want to consider your options as a fan. Number two, most of the Cowboys, including CeeDee Lamb, publicly came out in a show of support from Micah Parsons. Maybe that's what the Cowboys wanted. Maybe this is like Major League and they want the players to rally against management to have, the most success they can have. But the last and most important takeaway for me, these reports that the Cowboys don't like that Micah Parsons is outspoken with the media, hilarious. The Cowboys, the Dallas Cowboys of all teams don't like that one of their employees says too much too often to the media or in public. That's hilarious.
Chargers linebacker Denzel Perryman, he was arrested on a firearms charge.
I don't really see the details there, so we need more to get some more details there out of that arrest.
Broncos, they paid their defensive lineman Zach Allen $102 million over 4 years. Meanwhile, the Dolphins, very typical of them, they give defensive lineman Zach Sealer a 3-year extension, even though he had 2 years left on his current deal.
I can't tell you how much I love these two contracts for these guys. Both of these guys, Jack, had to do it the long, hard way. Sealer was a walk-on at Ferris State. Zach Allen, I think, was a 3rd or 4th round pick. I love that these teams are rewarding these guys. These guys are exactly what you're looking for and exactly the type of guys that you invest and pay. Kudos to both those teams and congrats to those guys.
And the NFLPA, they elect David White as their interim executive director.
Well, evidently, he was the finalist with Lloyd Howe. And in fact, there were more of the executive committee voted for David White than Lloyd Howe. But then when they went to the broader membership, they had more votes for Lloyd Howe. So I think David White, he can't be any worse than Lloyd Howe was. Let's put it that way. Other than that, I think we're done here.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also check out Even Money, Fantasy Feast, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network on Samsung TV Plus, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
Shout out myfrontpagestory.com. Remember, if you get a story for somebody, a loved one, at myfrontpagestory.com, not only do you get an incredible gift for a loved one, but I guarantee to sign something and send it to you in the mail if you want it. You just have to forward me the email after you do it, ross@rosstucker.com. Backofficescheduler.com, humanheadnyc.com, Sporticulture, and the always delicious Pizza Boy Brewing.